I'd like to end the way Sue's ending her year with a little restorative therapy with the 3 gets. Get loaded, get bathed, get happy. And now I'd like to have Doug Jackson come up for the pièce de résistance.
Well, congratulations, President Sue. They asked me if I'd do a little bit of a year in review for you, and that's where the poem ends. You know, Sue's career with Rotary actually got started with the World Community Service Committee, chairing that committee, and she threw herself into that role with great aplomb. After one of the meetings, she went up to Blair Gifford, and she said, "You know, Blair," she said, "Bob and I are planning our first trip to Mexico," and she said, "I'm really nervous about this because I don't speak Spanish." And Blair said, "That's okay." He said, all you have to do is just talk really slowly, and they'll understand what you're saying." So they got down to Puerto Vallarta. They got checked into their hotel. They went to the bar, and they sat down, and they thought they'd get a little food and some booze. And Sue reaches over and puts her hand on Bob's shoulder and says, "It's okay, Bob, I can handle this." Bartender walks up, and Sue says, "I would like 2 Coronas and 2 burritos." And the bartender says, "Okay, I will bring you 2 Coronas and 2 burritos." And then the bartender said, "Where are you from?" And Sue said, "Bob and I are from Denver." And the bartender says, "I'm from Denver too." And Sue says, "Well, wait. If you're from Denver and I'm from Denver, why are we both speaking Spanish?" It's not like she didn't try. She bought one of those Berlitz programs way back when. And it actually came in a series of 33 and a half LPs. And she's smart. She's efficient. She thought, I'm just going to stack these up at night, and I'll let this play, and I'll wake up in the morning, and I'll be able to speak Spanish. So she stacked them up. She turned this record player on, and she went to sleep. What she didn't know was that side A of the second album actually had a skip. So now she speaks Spanish with a stutter. Buenos dias, buenos dias, buenos dias, buenos dias. It's probably a really good thing, though, that she had this this international background because, we get these international Rotarian visitors. And you may remember that the day that we had the game at the Rockies Coors Field, we actually had a guy here a Rotarian from Scotland. And Sue's not a big baseball fan, but she thought she would take this guy and let him sit next to her. And so they were sitting there in about the second inning. Todd Helton gets up to bat, and he clobbers one right over the first base fence out there, first base line fence. And the Scottish Rotarian jumps up and just yells at the top of his lungs, "Run, laddie, run!" Well, 2 or 3 innings later, Tulowitzki gets up, and he sends one right between the third baseman and the shortstop. And the Scotsman jumps up again. "Run, laddie, run!" Well, wouldn't you know, the next guy gets up, and he's got full count, 2 and 3, and the pitcher throws another foul. Umpire says, "Take your base." The pitcher tosses the bat down, and he starts walking to the first base. And the Scotsman says, "You lazy boss, why don't you run? Run, laddie, run!" And Sue pulls him down and says, You don't understand. See, that was a 2 and 3 pitch, and the guy gets to walk. He just got 4 balls. And the Scotsman stands up and says, "Walk proudly, man. You just got 4 balls." It's tough in this club to be president when you don't really like baseball and you got Branch Rickey and all that stuff. I heard Sue actually, maybe it was Harriet, telling Harriet that the foul balls were actually named after the San Diego Chicken. I don't think so. Bob took Sue to the first game, to her first baseball game, and she was running late. And they got in about the halfway mark of the 5th inning, and Bob was just lit. He was upset. He was mad. They sit down. Sue leans over to the next guy and says, "So what's the score?" He says, "It's 0-0. She looks at Bob and says, "I don't know why you're so upset. You haven't missed anything." Bob was really actually a very good sport. When Sue was named as president, he went out and he bought her a mood ring. And when Sue's in a really great mood, it turns this beautiful shade of Paul Harris blue. And when she gets in a bad mood, it leaves a bright red mark on Bob's forehead. She was active in a lot of things this year. She was active in the 9 Health Fair. She went in and actually got her blood test. And she came back out, and she was sitting in the waiting room, and she had her finger all bandaged up. And there was a guy sitting there looking at her. And he says, "What happened to your finger?" She says, "Well, I came in and I came in for a blood test. And, you know, Jim Goddard, who's a member of this club, he uses a lot of volunteer nurses." And she said, the nurse cut my finger." Well, the guy jumps up, grabs his briefcase, and heads for the door. And Sue says, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm here for a urine test." She's kind of had a way of mixing up words from time to time. I remember this December, she mixed up Pearl Harbor Day with National Arbor Day. And I went up to her afterwards, and I said, "Did you really say Pearl Arbor Day?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, that's the day that Americans go out and plant oyster beds." She can, Ed's thinking oyster beds. She can be pretty literal, though. They bought a house not too long ago and had a circle drive. She actually couldn't go to work. Sue's an attorney. The first day that she was out in private practice, she ran down to the Cherry Creek Mall, and she started handing out business cards. And then she ran back to her office, and she just sat to wait for all of the people to come in. And sure enough, about 2 hours later, this guy comes in, nice-looking guy, and she sees the fellow coming in, so she reaches over and grabs the phone. She doesn't want to look desperate, and she said, "Yes, of course. Yes, well, I used to clerk for Wine Check. Yes, we're going to litigate this. Okay, I'm calling the judge. We'll set this for depositions." Hangs up. She looks at the guy, and she says, "I'm Sue Fox. I'm here to represent you. What can I do for you?" He says, "Well, actually, ma'am, I work for Quest, and I'm here to hook up your phone." We were going to tell more lawyer jokes, but the problem with lawyer jokes is the lawyers don't think they're funny, and everybody else thinks they're jokes. It's been a tough year economically. Who would have thought that Sue would be president the year that Angelina Jolie started adopting American kids? I called her up and I asked her, I said, "How's the foundation? Are we balanced?" She said, "We now have 50% in cash and 50% in canned goods." I said, "Well, how's Chuck Everell doing with all of that?" And she said, "Well, he's sleeping like a baby." I said, "What does that mean?" She said, "That means he wakes up every hour crying for warm milk." But Chuck jumped in and rebalanced our portfolio. He sold all of our GM stock and bought Hot Wheels. It's working well. Sue's legacy to this club, you may know, is fundraising. Sue wants to help Skip Ahern restart Artists of America. And what they're going to do this time is they're going to go out and they're going to build a museum. It's a first-of-its-kind museum. It's 5 stories tall. Every floor has a skylight. They were going to put an escalator in from the 1st to the 5th floor, and Sue said, "You can't put an escalator in. What happens if we have a power outage?" Think about it. So this will be a new museum, and the new museum is going to be one of its kind in all of the United States. This is going to be a museum that displays all the arms and legs that are missing from the statues at other museums.